We've reviewed a lot of top-tier gaming PCs for you this year, but only the budget-friendly low-end versions of the CyberPowerPC. Now it's time to see what the best of the best CyberPowerPCs can do. Spec for spec, it's one of the least expensive gaming PCs that you can find. But is it really worth it? In this 100% honest and unbiased review, I'm going to share with you everything that you need to know about the top spec version of the CyberPowerPC Gamer Supreme. Because of how popular this PC is, I spent days running tests on two of the most popular configurations for this PC. One maxed out version with an i913900KF CPU and 4090 GPU, and a more affordable option with an i7-13700KF CPU and 4080 GPU. I'm going to quickly take you through the unboxing and what's included, gaming and creator benchmarks, design and build quality, the internals, thermals, fan noise, overall ease of use, pricing breakdowns and comparing its price to performance ratio against the competition, and my overall likes and dislikes. If you decide against this PC after anything that I say in this video, just keep watching, because I'm also going to be sharing with you some alternative PCs that I recommend for every budget. I'll have links down below for all the computers that I mentioned. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you will know if this PC is right for you or not, if you watch the whole video. But if you still have any questions after watching this entire video, just shoot me a comment, and if you're publicly subscribed, I guarantee a personal response. All right, now we're going to rewind back into the past and check out the unboxing. First thing we've got here is our included RGB CyberPower gaming keyboard. A pretty basic membrane keyboard. The actual key presses feel pretty good. It really doesn't look all that impressive when it's turned off, but when it's turned on, it looks pretty freaking cool in the dark. Then we've also got included in here is a CyberPower M1-131 gaming mouse. The same one that we got on the last two lower spec CyberPower PCs that we reviewed. I actually really like this soft rubberized texture they've got on the top. Important, read this first. We've got a quick start guide with some very obvious information. You'll also get a quick installation guide, which actually is pretty useful for those new to swapping out components or installing new ones. Then we've got a DVD with a backup of all the drivers. I have not seen one of these in a long time, except for the other CyberPower PCs. Then we've got some hard drive cables, your pretty cool looking futuristic Wi-Fi antenna, and a very thick and beefy power cable. Overall, the design is pretty much what you'd expect with a CyberPower PC. Gamer RGB galore, yet not too much, at least in my opinion. You can turn them off if you want to, but honestly, I think that looks pretty bland. It's a pretty decent sized case with plenty of room for upgrades. Weighing only 37 pounds, measuring 9¼ inches wide, 18 inches deep, and 19½ inches tall. On the front, we've got this unique little diagonal dash design with two intake fans peeking through. The airflow with these front two fans is pretty efficient, bringing fresh, cool air across the motherboard and GPU, then quickly collecting the heat and shooting it out the back and top exhaust fans. These top two fans also function as part of our all-in-one liquid cooling system, which all starts from this water cooling block right here. For those of you new to PC gaming that don't know how this works, that water cooling block is what collects the heat from our CPU and transfers it up through these tubes up into this giant radiator right here, where the heat is then spread out and then blown out with these top two fans. To the right of our CPU is our 16GB stick of Team Group DDR5 RAM at 4800 megahertz. A pretty disappointingly low end and slower RAM than what I'm used to with other top tier gaming PCs, and I would have preferred to have two 8GB sticks versus one 16GB stick, because dual channel is always faster. It's actually the first top tier gaming PC that I've reviewed that only gave us one stick of RAM. Then underneath our CPU, behind this metal heatsink, is our crucial P3 Plus SSD, which is actually the main drive that our operating system was installed on, and we'll show you the speeds that we got for that here in a sec. Then underneath that, the most expensive and most important part of this PC, our massive MSI 4090 GPU. About the same size as my large Founders Edition 4080. It does feel pretty solid and high quality with a nice weight to it, and the design is definitely very gamer-esque. Not my personal favorite, but still pretty cool. Behind and below our GPU, we've also got two more available M.2 SSD slots, if you're like most people and plan to add any storage in the future. This Asus Prime Z690P Wi-Fi motherboard that's included in this build is one of the the few that I've seen recently that actually has access to the 3 PCIe expansion card slots underneath the GPU. Most of them are covered by the GPU. Then swinging around to the back, we've got a bracket for extra fans, 2 bays for 2.5-inch SSDs, and 2 at the bottom for 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives. And then lastly, in the bottom right corner, our EVGA 1000 GT 80+ gold power supply with 1000 watts of power. This one is modular too, so much easier to swap it out without having to rerun all your cables. For the ports on the top, we've got your power button, a reset button, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a headphone and microphone jack. On the back, we've got 2 USB 2.0 ports and a PS2 port for older keyboards and mice, an HDMI and display port, 3 more USB-A ports and 1 USB-C port, a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, and then 6 high-quality audio ports, your connectors for your Wi-Fi 6 antenna, and then on the back of our 4090 GPU, 2 HDMI and 2 display ports. For the software, the main app that you'll be using is the Armory Crate app. The dashboard gives you a pretty nice display of your CPU, GPU, and RAM stats, like frequency, temperature, and usage percentages, as well as the status of each of your fans and current voltage. In this app, you can also adjust your RGB lighting effects within the Aura Sync section. What you'll probably be adjusting the most is this fan speed section. Silent mode is pretty great if you're doing anything other than gaming and creator work. Turbo and full speed is what I recommend for anything intense though, if you want to keep your temperatures in check and your PC performing at its max potential. And then the only other useful tab in here is the tools section, where you get a nice overview of your drivers and any updates they may have. And then in the BIOS, there's even more settings that you can fine tune, like more custom fan controls, this AEMP section, which is ASUS's version of XMP RAM, allowing us to slightly overclock to 5200 megahertz. And then you've got this advanced mode down here with a lot more customization options if you want to tweak some of the more complex settings. Now, when it came to the fan noise, these were my results after testing each of the main fan profiles. In quiet and idle mode, it was about 41.3 decibels. Compared to the other pre-builts, it's about average when it's just sitting there doing nothing. But when moving up to performance mode, it brought the fan noise up to about 45 decibels. Which, unfortunately, as you can see here, is one of the loudest. The frequency and pitch of the fan noise didn't bother me that much, but I would still consider it a con for people that don't have music or game sounds overpowering it. Now for the thermals, in our thermal imaging time-lapse, starting from the moment the computer is powered on until it becomes fully active during about 20 minutes of gaming, we do see the typical accumulation of heat on the glass right next to our GPU. Taking off the side panel provides us with a closer look on what's going on here. Quite a bit of heat coming off that GPU, and swinging around the back and removing that cover, you can see from the back of the CPU how much heat is generated from that area as well. But overall, heat does efficiently escape out the back and top exhaust fans. The majority of our testing was spent in actual gameplay though. These were our CPU temps for several different games at 1080p. You can see right there at the top where our i9 version of this CyberPowerPC stands when it comes to heat. Right smack dab in the middle of the pack compared to most, but an overall improvement next to the competition when you compare how hot the CyberPowerPCs got with previous gen. Just look how hot last year's 12th gen i7 got here. This chart averages all temperatures across all games and compares them to all of the most recent PCs that I've reviewed. The i7 version of the CyberPowerPC Gamer Supreme that I tested was still on the hotter end compared to the other pre-builts that I've tested in that category though. But when moving up to 4K gaming, things changed quite a bit. I organized this chart by the GPU because high resolution gaming puts more pressure on the GPU and less on the CPU. This time, the top tier i94090 version of this PC had a hotter GPU than average, but the lower end version with an i7 4080 GPU had the second lowest temperature that I've seen in a 4080 pre-built yet. Performance and gaming benchmarks. And up next, the most important part of this review, the price to performance ratios. For Cinebench R23, which simulates its 3D rendering power, we got a multi-core score of 37,388 and a single core score of 2,231. This is a CPU-based rendering test, and this score is a clear winner, with it being one of the fastest rendering pre-builts that we've tested so far. Although the i7 480 version slightly underperformed compared to the other similar pre-builts in that category. Another very helpful benchmark for you 3D renderers is the V-Ray benchmark. And these were our CUDA, RTX, and overall V-Ray performance scores. And this is where it stands compared to the others. Pretty much as average gets compared to the competition, at least for the 4090 version. Just barely on the lower end for the 4080 configuration though. The V-Ray performance performance benchmark, which is a CPU-based rendering test, showed both the i9 and i7 configurations to rank a little higher than average compared to the other pre-builts in their categories. GPU-based rendering tests demonstrate how well a PC can handle real-time and viewport rendering, while CPU rendering tests demonstrate how fast it handles the more advanced realistic rendering that takes a lot longer to calculate. But for those of you who use Blender, we got a GPU score of 13,172 and a CPU score of 531. This was pretty average compared to the other 4090 pre-builts, but surprisingly, the 4080 configuration of this PC underperformed in its category. And the last set of benchmarks for creatives before we get into gaming are the Fusion benchmarks. For the editing software DaVinci Resolve, we got a score of 2833. On the charts, it proves to be a little lower than average, and unfortunately for Adobe Premiere, we got a similar situation. 880 for the i9-4090 configuration, and 832 for the i7-480 configuration. For the SSD, the main drive that the operating system and everything else was installed on, we got speeds of about 5,000 megabytes per second read and about 4,400 megabytes per second write. This is about 2,000 megabytes per second slower than the other top tier pre-builts that I'm used to. For 3D Mark, which is a great benchmark used to predict a computer's overall gameability, we got an overall score of 30,249, a graphics score of 36,289, and a CPU score of 15,567. This reveals both configurations to be slightly lower than the competition here. Actual gaming benchmarks are probably what you guys care the most about though. These were our average FPS results we got for several games at their highest preset settings in 1080p, and how both configurations of the CyberPower Gamer Supreme compare with a few of the other recent PCs that we've tested. To make it easier to look at and understand, this is our master chart with all FPS from all games averaged and ranked. You can see on average the top tier version of this PC got 268 FPS, which at least for 1080p gaming is unfortunately on the lower end compared to most pre-builts with i9s and 4090s. Same thing with the i7-480 version, one of the lowest performing in that category as well. Same thing at 4K, except the top tier version had way less of a gap between the absolute best above it, not even enough to actually notice or make a difference. Your wallet will notice the difference though. Which brings me to the price to performance ratios. I'll have YouTube product tags directly on this video and links down below in the description for all the computers that I mentioned. Both configurations were just average when cross-referencing their pricing with their performance. Last gen CyberPower PCs were quite a bit better value than they are now. My recommendation for an i7-480 at the time of this recording is actually the Skytech Eclipse. This is due to it having the best value in that category overall, and for an i9-4090, hands down I would go with the HP Omen 45L. These pre-builts are two of some of the very few that I've seen that actually maintain great pricing post Black Friday. Many of the others have inflated their pricing stupid high, or just went out of stock, which I actually predict the HP Omen 45L and the Skytech Eclipse too as well, if they keep these same low prices. In fact, the two versions of the CyberPower PC Gamer Supreme that we tested are also now out of stock, so the links in the description are the closest CyberPower PC equivalents with the same specs, so probably plus or minus 5% in performance. Our 1440p price to performance chart further confirms the Skytech Eclipse and HP Omen 45L to be the best options in their categories. It changed quite a bit at 4K resolutions though, with the Skytech Eclipse current pricing right now putting it at the very top of the charts as the best value gaming PC in all categories that I've tested yet. And of course, the HP Omen 45L topped the charts in the top tier category in 4K as well. The Lenovo Legion Tower 7i Gen 8 was a close second, but that one also went out of stock after I praised it for the insane deal that it used to be when it was actually available. If the $2,500 that the i7-480 version of the Skytech Eclipse is still too much for you, then these are my recommendations for every budget. Remember, I'll have links down below for all the computers that I mentioned. At $2,100, the slightly lower spec Skytech Eclipse with a 14th gen i7 and 4070 Ti is what I recommend. I say this in pretty much every review, but it absolutely blows my mind that a computer like that one is actually faster than all the top tier PCs from last year at half the price. It really is a good time to be a PC gamer. If that's still too much, then the CyberPower PC Gamer Extreme with a 13th gen i7 and 4060 Ti for $1,400 is what I would get. If you need to be closer to $1,000, then I recommend the HP Omen 25L that I reviewed. This one with a Ryzen 7 5700G and a 4060 GPU. The similar spec one that I reviewed is currently the best value PC overall when it comes to performance at 1080p gaming. And the least expensive gaming PC in this current market of inflated prices that I can actually get behind and recommend is the Lenovo Legion Tower 5i with a 13th Gen i5 and 3060 GPU for $800. If you're coming from a console like an Xbox Series X or the PS5 and you want the graphics to at least match that, then you'll need a PC with at least a 3060 GPU. Overall, this PC was a pretty decent pre-built when it was actually in stock, but even before it went out of stock, I would still recommend the HP Omen 45L if you want an i9 and 4090, and the Skytech Eclipse if you want an i7 and 4080. But of course, if money doesn't matter to you, my favorite non-custom pre-built so far is the Corsair Vengeance i8200. And if you just want to follow the crowd, almost half of all of my viewers ended up going with the Corsair Vengeance i7-400, which is now the i7-500. Not as flashy, but pretty much almost as powerful as the i8200. If you do decide to purchase this PC or any of the others that I mentioned, then please remember to use my affiliate links in the comments and description below, as I get a small commission at no cost to you for every single purchase made. And it's actually a major factor in keeping this channel going and getting better and better for you. I'd also like to personally thank all of my members for their monthly support of this channel. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications turned on to stay up to date with all of my latest tech and gaming PCs. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you guys. God bless.